In this video, I'm going to be covering what I bring with me on a backpacking trip. And I'm going to go over everything I bring in the backpack, as well as what I bring in the car. This right here is what I call my personal bag. Inside my personal bag, I have a rain jacket, I have a light, and I also have a map box. So the map that I'm going to be using for the trip is actually in my pack. But what I found in practice is that sometimes you call an audible and you change your mind because of fires or closures or weather, or whatever the case may be. There's many reasons why you might change your plans as you're driving over. So that's why I recommend bringing a box that contains all the maps for the area that you're going to be going to. And then I bring a bottle of water. This sits next to me while I'm driving. So in other words, I'm going to have a bottle of water next to me in the car and another bottle of water on my pack. And then I have a cotton hoodie. And so this is just stuff that I might need that I don't want to have to take out of my pack while I'm driving. But while I'm driving, I usually bring one of these kind of jackets. And this is the jacket that I was wearing on this trip. And by the way, I should probably mention, I'm coming back from an aborted trip. Basically, the weather wasn't cooperating, and so then I had 2 days worth of food, which is in this pack right here. The trip was originally going to be for 2 days, and then I decided to abort. Also, I have here what I call my overnight bag. So this is basically all my clothes that I use for like my city life. And I'm not planning on taking any of these with me on the trip, obviously, but they're going to need to come with me like the night before, because I stayed in an Airbnb the night before, and then this morning I was going to go to the hike, but the weather wasn't cooperating. There was a thunderstorm and I aborted. And so also what I have in my car with me is I have a spare tent. This is the bigger tent that I often use for what I call car camping. I have a Coleman grill. I have fuel for the Coleman grill. And I also have a variety of different types of fire starters. And I actually didn't bring all of these types with me on the trip because I'm going into an area where campfires are not allowed. So normally I would have brought these waterproof matches and potentially this long fire starter. These would be helpful for starting a campfire, but because I'm already bringing a lighter with me in my pack, I didn't end up bringing these with me in my pack. There are many different sizes of bear canisters that you can get. This is the medium size. I usually use this size right here, but I'm only staying for 2 days, and so then I was able to cram all my food into the smaller canister, which is in here. I'll show you in a second. And then they also make these bigger canisters like this. And I just find myself never using these canisters. Really, they're designed for very long trips or multiple people on a trip. Usually one person would carry this canister, perhaps the other person would carry the tent, but I just haven't had a chance to use this yet. You might use something like this, which is an Ursack. Please make sure that you're following the regulations of the area that you're going to be hiking. There are many considerations for when an Ursack would be appropriate. For example, in my Sawtooth Peak video, you can clearly see that I'm using a bearbox, and so that I didn't bring a bear canister with me. As far as hanging food is concerned, there are some places where that is permitted, like Yellowstone, for example. I would recommend bringing a bear canister anyway, because bears can really climb anything, and they're very intelligent. And studies have shown that they can get food even if it's hung up on trees. So I would just caution you on hanging your food. When I was a kid, we used to hang our food all the time, and that's the method that we used until more research started coming out that bears really can get into that. Another thing that I bring with me in my car is my American Red Cross supplies. This is in case I need to utilize some type of first aid. So I have a first aid kit, I have a radio, I have my headlamp, and then we're gonna go to the pack itself, okay? Normally I would bring crampons and I would bring my ice axes. I've got my ice axes right here. I've got kind of a longer style, like this. And I also have a shorter curved style, like this. The curved style is more for when you really want to dig in, like this. Whereas the straight style is much more for when you want to utilize the ice axe for stability as a third point when you're walking. Those are two items that I usually would attach to the outside of the pack. And you can see, by the way, I do have spike protectors on them. And that is so that the ice axes do not damage my pack or someone else who's behind me, for example. Another thing that I'm not bringing on the trip is this mosquito net. I often bring this in the early season or in places where I know mosquitoes are likely to congregate. Another thing that I never bring, or hardly ever bring, is trekking poles. As you know, I'm not a trekking pole person. To me, they just seem like a waste of weight. Unless I'm going to be fording a river, I probably would never bring trekking poles. There are some instances where I think it might be handy, like for example, if you're going to be hiking through snow and you need to have a lot of stability for that. But otherwise, I just think they're a waste of space and useless to be carrying with you. I'm also not bringing this harness here. This is a rock climbing harness. I sometimes will bring this if I'm going to be bringing my rope. I'm not bringing a rope on this trip because I'm not anticipating I will need one. I'm also not bringing these right here. These are gaiters. What gaiters do is that they go on your pants and they help prevent snow from coming through your boots so that your feet stay dry. I'm not bringing those because it's late season and I'm not expecting to encounter any snow. I'm also not going to bring my chalk bag. I never bring a chalk bag anywhere except for at sea level, because if you spent any time climbing in the higher altitudes, you know that it is very dry already up there. You just really don't perspire that much. So let's go ahead and take a look at the pack, actually. So what I have on here, as you can see, is this. This is how I store my water when I'm at camp. Obviously, when I'm hiking up from the trailhead, I have it empty. And then when I go into camp, I fill it up at a lake. And I don't use any other mechanism to do this. I've tried other things, but this is extremely light and it's very reliable. It doesn't break. It has a cap on top so I can pour with it. And I've tried the other mechanisms like the bladders and stuff, and just they've got too many moving parts. They've got too many parts that can fail. Keep it simple. This weighs hardly anything and it always does the job. One thing I am bringing on this trip that I don't normally bring is bear spray. So we're kind of getting into that hyperphagia season. Basically what that is towards the later half of the season, bears, they start getting really hungry because they need to go into hibernation. And so, you know, I hardly ever carry bear spray, to be honest with you, but I produced a video called North Twin a few months ago. And during that trip, I actually encountered a bear on the trail. And it was kind of scary because I was by myself and I didn't have bear spray. And I didn't include it in the video just because it was already getting long and it just kind of didn't work with the storytelling. I thought about it and I thought maybe, you know, because I'm going to be gone for 2 days, I'm by myself, I'll go ahead and bring bear spray on this trip. It does weigh a lot. And I do have it clipped like this to the outside of my pack. If I was camping in grizzly country, I definitely would bring this with me and I would keep it on my person, not on my pack. But this is just kind of a precaution, just in case I need it. Obviously, if you're camping in grizzly country, then it's going to be a different story. You're definitely going to need this, as well as potentially a firearm. So this is my sun protection. And if it's going to be a hot day with sun out, then I would, you know, swap this out for that, and I'd put this in my pack. That's how I would clip it to my pack. I would clip it to the outside like that. And then I would clip this to my tent when I pitched my tent. Then I have my climbing shoes. Now, to be honest with you, what I usually do is I put these in a separate bag Can't find my bag. Anyway, I usually put these in a separate bag and put them inside my pack because I don't like to have things dangling around outside if I can, but in this case, I simply don't have space. And what you're gonna see in my video as a common theme is what's really gonna be limiting you is not gonna be weight, it's gonna be space, okay? In theory, you can always carry more weight by getting stronger, but no matter how strong you are, if you don't have space, you can't carry an item, and it's as simple as that. In addition, the trail that I'm gonna be hiking on is relatively straightforward, and so then there's not a lot of movement that I'm gonna need to do where it's gonna be difficult for me to maintain my balance. The reason you wanna avoid stuff on the outside of your pack is because of balance mostly, especially if you're gonna be hiking on difficult terrain. That's gonna become a problem for you if it's putting you off balance. And then I have on here my helmet. I pretty much always bring a helmet with me. Another thing I wanted to mention is this right here. So this is my backpack bag. Now I'm not bringing this on the trip, but if I was gonna go on a plane, I definitely would wrap my bag up in this bag here. And the reason for that is because when I check it into the airline, I don't want the bag to get damaged or have something cut or ripped off. I've had that happen before when I was inexperienced and I was traveling with my old pack and a part of it got ripped off. It was the shoulder part. That's why I bring this, is so that I can make sure my pack is not gonna get damaged in the plane. Another thing that I bring with me is, well, this is kind of stuff that you may not need, but this is an extra lens that I need for my camera work. Let's just go ahead and remove that real quick. So this is just like, because I record on YouTube, I need a camera lens. And then I also have this right here. It's my sleeping pad. I used to use those Styrofoam ones, and they have the advantage of being very cheap and very lightweight and very durable. And then I switched over to those inflatable sleeping pads. And the problem with them is that they always seem to get holes in them. And I've gone through many different types, and I can tell you there's nothing more frustrating than having a sleeping pad with a hole in it, especially when you're trying to get a good night's sleep. I got this sleeping pad. It's a really high quality, very durable sleeping pad. You can also double it as a splint if you need to, because it's so weighty. So this is obviously very heavy and takes up a lot of space. So you may want to choose a sleeping pad that's one of those kind that can press down. So now we're going into the meat of the pack here. Let's look at this side. My pack has these shoulder straps. It has a chest strap that goes like that. And then it has this really simple belt here. My pet peeve is those packs that have those ridiculous hip belts. You know the ones I'm talking about? They have these big bulky things. You have no mobility with them. And so that's why I like this pack right here. This pack comes from a company that is super awesome. Their name is Free Range. And I love these packs. It's like the greatest company in the world. So I've got two compartments in this pack. I've got one on the top and one underneath it. And what I would usually put on the top part is my cell phone, my wallet, and my keys. Those go in here because I'm not gonna need those, really. I don't use my cell phone at all when I'm hiking. I usually put it in airplane mode and turn it off. Then I have my knife here. I usually bring this on every trip. You can see this being featured in my videos when I point to things on the map. I have some nutrition on the hike, which by the way is not in the bear canister because I'm gonna be eating it on the trail. That's why it's not in the bear canister. I have a lighter. I have a sunglass case with sunglasses inside. And by the way, I do keep a separate pair of sunglasses for the car. That is just so that everything that goes in the pack stays in the pack. I don't take anything out of the pack and then put it back in. Then I have my GPS Garmin. And what I usually do with this is I clip it to my person while I'm hiking, but I have it in my pack just so that if I need to put it in my pack, I know I have space for it. Then I have my sunscreen. Okay, this is what I call my sun kit right here. Now, you'll notice I'm actually bringing the entire bottle. Usually I don't do this. Usually I bring a smaller bottle and put just what I need in. But because I'm gonna be on a longer trip, the forecast was 3 days of sun. And then this morning when I woke up, there was this blanket of dark gray fog. And as I was driving closer to the trailhead, it was getting darker and darker. And then I started seeing lightning, and then I was like, okay, I'm aborting. So then I just aborted the trip. But I was expecting it to be very sunny. So that was a mystery to me how that happened. And then I have this. What I do when I'm hiking is I typically wear my hat like this. And if it's sunny or if there's snow, what I do is I get a bandana like so, and I fold it over into like so. So I take this bandana and then I put it on my head like this, and then I put my hat over it. And then what I have is sun protection for my neck mostly. You may find that you like to use a wide-brimmed hat. The reason that I don't use a wide-brimmed hat is because I can't clip that to my pack. You'll notice that I almost always wear long sleeve shirts and white ones. These are cotton shirts, and I would caution you on wearing cotton because obviously once it gets wet, it's very difficult to dry out. But cotton is very comfortable. And so I know this is a little bit controversial, and I don't want to set a bad example for you because most people would say that you want to wear those synthetic layers. I just love cotton, I sleep well in it, and I like hiking in it, and I don't really sweat. I know that's like an unusual thing to say, but I really don't sweat that much. And I don't know if that's like something where there's something wrong with my body or whatever, but you know, like how dogs, they pant. Maybe I'm just more of a panter than a sweater. In this side of the top section of the pack, we have more nutrition here. I probably should have put both of these in the same pocket. I have my fire permit. You need a fire permit. I wasn't really expecting to use this, but I brought it anyway. Then I have my map and my compass and my pen and my pencil and my log book. I've gone over all of these in my map and compass video if you haven't seen that. I have my headlamp. And I have my GoPro, which I use for my videos. Obviously, some of this stuff is optional. And now we're going into the pack itself. And I want you to see that there is this layer on top. This is my shell, okay? I usually put my shell on the top like this so that rain, if it touches the top of my pack, will not get the stuff inside wet. Particularly my sleeping bag, which is down. But to be honest with you, what I do in practice a lot of the time is I put my camera on top because I'm filming a lot. So if you don't have a camera, then I want you to follow this example. But if you do have a camera, you may either put your camera on top or you might put it on your chest like a lot of people do. This is my shell. And I put this on top as well because if it starts raining, I want to be able to use this quickly. Remember, I have a separate shell in there that's not for my backpack. Then I bring a book. I'm bringing Night of the Grizzlies by Jack Olson. Obviously this is optional, but I typically read while I'm at camp. And then this is my camera here. This is how I film my videos. And then I have my toilet paper. Sometimes I put my toilet paper in this part right here, but as you're gonna see, I like to have this section of my pack very padded, and in practice I find that I really don't use this on trail. Usually it's at camp when I need to use it, not on trail. So that's why this goes in the pack like that. And by the way, inside this I have hand sanitizer inside. Those two items never leave the bag. And you're gonna also notice a theme, which is where I compartmentalize things. I put things in little baggies so that they're organized. Then I have my water, okay? I sometimes clip this to the outside of my pack so that I can get to it easily. But the problem with that is that it tends to really kind of wobble around like this and throw you off balance. And that can get really annoying. I know some people like to use those bladders with those straws that come out. And to me, that seems a little bit overkill. For one thing, there's too many moving parts and too many parts that can break. With this, nothing can break. This thing is virtually indestructible. And if I need to, I can clip this to my harness, or to my belt rather, while I'm climbing without my pack, and it'll still be on my person. Then I have this. Well, this is obviously optional, but for me, I have insomnia, and so I don't sleep well. I find that it's necessary to bring a pillow. This is a lot of space. What some people do is that instead of bringing the pillow, they just put their down jacket inside of a bag like this and use that as a pillow, which is fine. But I just like to have a really nice pillow, and this is a luxury item. So you might say you don't need that, and that's fine. If I'm on a more alpine style climb or whatever, obviously I won't bring this, but because this is a fairly basic climb I was planning on doing, I didn't need a lot of stuff, in other words. I didn't need crampons, I didn't need a harness or a rope. This is a rope right here. There are many different types. This is a standard 60-meter rope. As you probably know, ropes are used for things like rappelling and belaying, and I don't really use them that much. I would call myself a mountaineer, but I really wouldn't call myself a rock climber. This is my mug for coffee. Now, I'm a coffee drinker, and I like to have a hot beverage. It really elevates my mood in the mornings and gets me motivated. Then I put my gloves inside. Now, you may want to put your gloves on the top part of your pack so you can get to them easily. But in this case, I wasn't planning on using them because I was picturing it being sunny. So that was kind of something that I didn't really anticipate, and that's why I put this in here. Then I have my tent light. This is used for when I set up my tent, I hang this from the top. And then I have another lighter, backup lighter. And then I have, well, this is again camera stuff. This is what's known as an intervalometer because I was planning on taking some night photos, specifically like a time lapse. And then you'll notice I have here my down jacket. And so what I wanted to emphasize with the down jacket is I was planning on it being sunny, so I wasn't planning on using the down jacket while I was hiking. I was planning on using it at night. But also, you're going to notice that what I try to do is I try to cushion things as much as possible inside the pack. So that I've kind of stuffed this in here. And then there's my down jacket right there. Then I have my sleeping bag. Now I wanted to mention one thing about the sleeping bag, which is, you know how they come in those little bags that you can stuff them in? When I was a newbie, I used to put them in those bags and then stuff them in here. And then I learned that what you want to do is you want to put your sleeping bag inside all the nooks and crannies to fill up space in your pack. In other words, what I'm saying is you don't need that bag at all. What you want to do is stuff your sleeping bag in the spaces between all the other items. You'll see how this works in a second. Matter of fact, let me just show you. So this is what it looks like from the top view, okay? I fill those spaces with padded items. One, to fill the space. Two, because it also helps cushion things in there. And so that way the pack is not super hard on your back, especially if you're using a pack like this that doesn't have a ton of support like some other packs do. And then I have this. This is my cooking system. And my cooking system here is pretty simple. But the reason I use this cooking system is a couple reasons. One, it's pretty much the smallest, lightest cooking system you can use. You have fuel, and you connect the fuel here, like this, and then you have a heat source here. You put that heat source here, and it boils water. This is known as a jet boil. When it comes to the jet boil, nothing goes in here except for water. You boil water, you pour that boiling water into your dehydrated food, and then you eat out of your dehydrated foods bag. And so you don't even bother with cleaning any sort of dishes or anything because the only thing that goes into here is water. So here's my sleeping bag. It's a down sleeping bag. It is the best sleeping bag that you can get for money and for weight. With sleeping bags, you really want to buy the most expensive one you can that's the lightest and the least amount of material. You don't want to buy a sleeping bag that's cheap. Trust me on that. It's going to take up space and it's going to take up weight and it's going to irritate you. Then I have my first aid kit here. This is the one that goes in my pack. Remember, it never leaves the pack. Then I have a spare change of socks. I am a stickler about bringing a spare change of socks. And then I have my tent. My tent has my poles and my stakes inside of it. It is a very minimal tent. It's the one you see in all my videos, the Nemo. And then I have my spoon. I typically bring 1, sometimes 2 spoons. The reason I sometimes bring 2 spoons is because sometimes I want to have 1 for coffee and 1 for eating. So this is the only dish I need to clean, is this spoon right here. So it makes my life very simple. And then now we're gonna look at the bear canister. Now I wanna spend a little bit of time on the bear canister. And I do put the bear canister at the bottom, by the way. And there are some people who say, oh, you wanna put the heavier items in the middle. I would say that's not a good idea, okay? You wanna put the heavier items on the bottom. And the reason for that is because what's practically gonna happen is all the heavier items are gonna be on the top. Like for example, your camera is gonna be one of the heaviest items you carry if you bring a camera. And that's gonna be on the top because you're gonna be using it. Your water, if you're gonna bring your water in your pack, is gonna be on the top so you can get to it. What I find is that all the heavier items tend to accumulate on the top anyway, and so then I try to balance that out with the heavier items on the bottom. Besides, what you kind of want to have is your pack not being top heavy. The more weight's on the bottom, the more the pack is going to kind of stand up when you put it down. And that's kind of annoying when you put your pack down after you're hiking, like for a break or something, and it just kind of tumbles over. That's why I say to put all the heavy items on the bottom, especially the bear canister. Now you'll notice that I do put the sleeping bag and the other things like the down jacket around the bear canister so that you don't have this big bulky thing hitting your back. But just looking at this canister, you can see I have filled every bit of space pretty much with stuff. And I have with me nuts. The reason I bring cashews is because they have a very high amount of calories and they taste good and I like them. I don't bring anything that can melt. I wouldn't bring chocolate, I wouldn't bring anything that can melt because the chances are whatever's in the canister is gonna melt and the sun is really gonna amplify those smells. If there's a chocolate candy bar in your bear canister, believe me, that's gonna get picked up by a bear. Then I have my trash bag, which always goes in my canister. And then I have my food. It's kind of hard to see here, but I've got it kind of layered out like this in this crisscross pattern where I put one meal down, which is the breakfast, and then the next meal down on top of it like this, which is the dinner, and then the next one on top of that. So I make this kind of crisscross pattern, and it's so tight that I can't even I can't even shake it out. This is my dinner, and this is my breakfast. So this is first day. And then I have my coffee. This is a luxury item for me. And then I have my toothbrush. It's the smallest toothbrush you can get, and some toothpaste, and a little tiny string of dental floss. I don't bring the entire roll, I just bring a string of it. There's no reason to bring the roll. Some people say the 10 essentials include bringing extra water. I say, don't bring extra water, bring water purification and know where you can find a source of water. Bringing extra water is not good advice because practically speaking, you're not going to be able to carry enough water with you for the entire trip. And then this is my last meal, which is my breakfast. Obviously, you're gonna wanna configure your pack according to your own needs. Some people like to bring a chair with them. I just find that's unnecessary. Some people like to bring fishing poles, fishing rods. I've brought those before and they're just kind of bulky. I really do focus everything when I go hiking on the minimum amount of stuff. My whole thing is, my objective is to climb mountains. And whatever stuff is gonna help me do that is going in my pack. The only thing I bring that's not needed is my book and my pillow. With that in mind, I hope you enjoy yourself on your backpacking trip and have a great time and stay safe.